This is BBC World News with me, Alice Baxter. The latest headlines. Both the US and Iran have denied military cooperation in the fight against Islamic State militants. But the Pentagon has confirmed what this image suggests. An Iranian jet has carried out airstrikes against the jihadists in Iraq. The US Secretary of State John Kerry says the US-led operation against IS will go on for as long as it takes. Speaking in Brussels following a meeting of coalition partners, he said airstrikes had inflicted significant damage on the group's capabilities. And the head of Sweden's ruling coalition has called a snap election for March after MPs rejected his minority government's budget. Prime Minister Stephen Löfven took office less than 3 months ago. And 2014 is in the running to be the hottest globally since records began. Early estimates show that in the first 10 months of the year, the average air temperature was about 0.57 Celsius above long-term average.
I'm Yalda Hakim, presenter and correspondent. Join me on BBC World News.
Now on BBC World News, your daily briefing on business and economics from the world's financial centres. From New Broadcasting House in London, World Business Report.
Japanese airbag giant Takata rejects requests for a US national recall of all cars with potentially faulty airbags that can explode and shoot out shrapnel. And others have tried and failed, but get ready because Lufthansa prepares to announce plans for a no-frills long-haul airline. We'll find out if the Germans can make it work. Hello there, a very warm welcome to you. This is World Business Report with me, Alice Baxter. In just a moment, we'll be live in New York. But first this hour, let's talk about Lufthansa because it's set to launch a new low-cost, long-haul airline on Wednesday. It hopes that new fuel-efficient modern jets will help it take on rival carriers, especially on long-haul business routes. Also, what are they up against? The first airline to offer no-frills transatlantic flights was Freddie Laker's SkyTrain back in 1976, flying between London and New York. But Laker Airways, it went bust in 1982. Then, in 2012, Air Asia X was forced to scrap low-cost flights from Kuala Lumpur to Europe after about a year due to high fuel costs. Then, in 2013, Norwegian Air Shuttle began operating no frills between the UK and the US. Well, let's talk aviation, long-haul budget with John Strickland, aviation airlines expert from JLS Consulting. Well, many thanks for joining me here in the studio. So Lufthansa is describing its new budget airline as young and cheeky. But is it foolhardy?
Well, young and cheeky may not actually mean making money for Lufthansa, and as you said, others have tried and failed. We've got a very mixed bag. Long-haul low-cost is certainly a far from proven airline business model. Short-haul low-cost is now known and accepted and successful financially all over the world. But long-haul low-cost, the whole idea of saving cost cannot be done as effectively on long-haul flights. You can't fly your aircraft more per day in general because once you've done a long-haul trip there and back, there's no more time left. You can't use your people more. There's a limited choice of alternative airports. So it's okay to go out and offer low prices, but low prices themselves don't necessarily make money.
I mean, we were just talking through the long list of attempts at doing this long-haul budget airline idea. It is no reason to suggest that it could never work. But even in the short-haul budget arena, competition is intense at that level of the market. And surely haven't EasyJet and Ryanair snuffled it all up in Europe anyway? Well,
it's an interesting point because Ryanair themselves are long mooted to be interested in setting up long-haul low-cost services. Indeed, Michael O'Leary is quite upfront about it. What he has said, he is going to wait until he can get the right kind of aircraft at the right price. He doesn't believe that's possible at the moment. And he's also said, interestingly enough, for Ryanair, they will put a business class on board. Now, Lufthansa is talking about using existing aircraft, you could say like low mileage, second-hand aircraft, very good Airbus A330s. It's not going to have a business class. It's going to have different fare types with different trimmings. But you do need higher fare levels on a certain number of your passengers to have a chance to make money on long-haul low cost. Because Leisure traffic's very fickle. It will move around according to price. It's seasonal. You know, economic blips and your leisure traffic drains away. So the model is certainly quite risky. And
as you suggest, external factors are hugely important in the airline industry. The oil price, events happening in Ukraine and Gaza, for example. The industry is not immune to the geopolitical situation. Also, the cynical amongst us might also point to the timing of this announcement, because this is a bad week for Lufthansa. It was making headlines yesterday because of its strikes, its pilot strikes over early retirement. Is there anything in the timing?
Well, possibly. I mean, they've mooted that they were going to do this for some time, but they are having a very bad year. The pilot strikes seem to be never-ending. If we compare their peer group, IAG, the owner of British Airways in Iberia, they've convinced their workforce, including pilots, of a need to make changes to cut costs in order to survive for the long term. Lufthansa hasn't got that message over to its pilots successfully. The battles are still going on. It's very much a beleaguered airline. It's complaining vocally about the rise of the Gulf carriers and their increasing access to the European market. It sees the threat of low-cost airlines, and it seems it's not really quite clear what it's doing strategically. This is a little bit of a very little toe in the water.
We're going to have to see if young and cheeky also equates to successful. John, always good to get your views on these things. John Strickland there, aviation specialist and special friend to World Business Report. Let's talk now about airbags, because this particular company, they make 1 in 5 airbags on the road. And today, US lawmakers grilled Takata bosses about their safety records, because at least 5 deaths have been linked to faulty airbags made by the Japanese firm over the past 6 years. As a result, 14 million vehicles around the world have been recalled for repairs. And late on Tuesday, manufacturers Toyota, Honda, Ford and General Motors and others who fit Takata airbags said that they would club together to find the cause of the safety defect. But Takata has resisted US demands to issue a nationwide recall of all airbags in the US. Samir Hussain has more.
They are meant to protect you in case of an accident, but some airbags have done the exact opposite.
I felt gushing blood running down my neck. I was terrified. Since that day, I've endured multiple surgeries and therapies. I have more to go still. My vision will never be the same. I will never be the same.
As an off-duty soldier, Stephanie Erdman never expected to get shrapnel in the eye from her car's airbag while driving in Florida. The faulty airbags are made by Japan's Takata Corporation. They can explode with too much force, sending shrapnel flying into the car. They've been linked to 5 deaths and multiple injuries. U.S. lawmakers hauled Takata executives to Washington last month to answer questions about what they knew about the defective devices and for how long. For their part, they were apologetic.
We are deeply sorry about each of the reported instances in which a Takata airbag has not performed as designed and the driver or passenger had suffered personal injuries or deaths.
Reluctant to take full responsibility, Takata execs will unlikely get a warm reception when they face lawmakers in Washington on Wednesday, especially with millions of these potentially defective airbags still on American roads. Samir Hussain, BBC News, New York.
Let's bring you a little bit of other business news now, because the ruble has fallen back, sinking to new record lows against the dollar and the euro. The Russian currency has lost more than 40% against the dollar and 60% against the euro since the start of the year. Western sanctions against Russia over Ukraine and the fall in oil prices are hurting the economy. Australia's economy slowed in the last 3 months, ending in September. Output grew at an annual rate of 2.7%, well below the 3% forecast. Lower demand for its raw material exports has sparked the slowdown. And in his latest budget statement, British Finance Minister George Osborne has said he intends to crack down on tax avoidance by big companies. He intends to do this by imposing a 25% tax on, quote, profits generated by multinationals from economic activity in the UK, which they then artificially shift out of the United Kingdom. Companies such as Google, Amazon and Starbucks have all been accused of using such strategies to reduce their tax bills. Right, time now for a quick look to see how the markets are getting on. And a batch of good news on the US economy helped to nudge stocks a little bit higher on Wednesday as major indices flitted near record levels. Oil and gas companies also climbed as the price of crude oil edged up slightly, although it is still trading below $71 a barrel. OK, that is the way the business news looks this hour. Do get in touch with me. I'm at BBC Baxter. We always love to hear your views, but from me and the team, that's all the business for this hour. See you soon.